No DQ Galaxy. We are live with a recap of the 2023 AEW Worlds End pay-per-view event, the first AEW Worlds End, and it was a noteworthy show to say the least. A lot went down on this show. A lot's going down in wrestling right now. 2024 is looking to be a wild year in wrestling. 2023 was crazy. Can it be topped? We'll see. Let's get to this recap. It's almost midnight. We have a lot to discuss. I very much appreciate super chats. Feel free to leave them at any time, but I will get to them at the appropriate time. If you send a super chat about the main event, I'll discuss it during the main event. Now, let's get to the show. We had our 0 hour, which was the kickoff. We had 3 matches. We had a women's match, Chris Statlander versus Willow Nightingale. Pretty good match, although they were botching a few things at the end. Willow did pick up the victory. And then we had a 20-man battle royal. Now, this match you might not think was important, but it actually was. This match was to determine who would get a future TNT Championship opportunity, and it's like Money in the Bank, where they can cash it in at any time. Mostly lower card guys, but you did have Kill Switch in there. Now, everyone tried to get rid of Kill Switch early. They buried him under tables. They were using chairs, but he did come back. It was very similar to like what wrestlers would do to Big Show to try and get him out of the match. They tried to take out Kill Switch. He came back into the match, and he went at it with Lance Archer, who was the other big man in the match. And they were working together. They were cleaning house. They eliminated a lot of people. It came down to Archer, Kill Switch, Danhausen, and Trent. Danhausen and Trent worked together to eliminate Archer, but then Trent turned against Danhausen, eliminated him. It was down to Trent and Kill Switch, and well, Kill Switch got the win. No shock here whatsoever. Trent's kind of an idiot. He should have waited till it was one-on-one Trent and Danhausen to eliminate Danhausen instead of eliminating him when you still had to deal with Kill Switch. Not the brightest idea. Kill Switch picks up the victory, and he was the guy that I expected to win this match and get the TNT Championship opportunity. More on the TNT match here in just a few moments. Our final match of the 0 hour was Hook defending the FTW Championship against Wheeler Yuta. It was an FTW rules match, so they could fight on the outside of the ring. They did. They had weapons that they were using, like a stop sign. But then Hook grabbed a hockey stick, I guess because of the New York Islanders. He had a hockey stick, and he broke the stick and then used a piece of it for leverage with the Red Rum and got the submission victory over Wheeler Yuta. It was fine. Nothing really much to say about it. Your standard match. We opened up the show with our first of 2 8-man tag team matches. We had Bryan Danielson, Claudio, Mark Briscoe, and Daniel Garcia going up against Jay White, Roosh, Jay Lethal, and Brody King. Basically, the participants from the Continental Classic that did not make the final. And it was a pretty solid opening match. You had Daddy Magic out there, and Brody King called him a bitch. That was entertaining. It was a good match. You had Claudio coming in, doing some spots with Brody. Crowd was chanting meat. Claudio did the big swing. Now, I did miss a little bit of the match because the pay-per-view feed cut out. Thankfully, it happened in the opening match and not during the main event at a critical moment. It cut out for like 30 seconds. I don't really think I missed too much of it. And things started to break down. You had everybody coming in, hitting their big moves, big move, big move. And you had Garcia pinning Jay Lethal to pick up the match for his team. No real surprise here. I figured Danielson's team would win. And afterwards, they did the dance together. Well, Jay Lethal, he was not dancing. He got beat, but Daniel Garcia was very happy. And there you go. They pick up the win. Daniel Garcia gets a moment on the pay-per-view. We had Miro versus Andrade El Idolo. Now, this match was interesting and not interesting. Interesting because of the news that Andrade is apparently done with AEW. Now, I did predict, we talked about this on our recent predictions video. We were asked, who do we think is going to jump to WWE from AEW next? And first person I mentioned was Andrade. And I said, I don't know exactly when his contract is up. Apparently it's up after this show. It's up in the immediate future. And he's done. That's the word. He is leaving AEW. Not really surprised about this whatsoever. That was what made this interesting, but also not, because number one, the presumption was he was going to lose. And number two, the crowd, I think they had that same type of attitude. It was kind of like Bill Goldberg versus Brock Lesnar from WrestleMania 20. The only difference is that I think the crowd was more respectful here, but there was like a lack of crowd heat for a good part of this match. But it was a good match, and they did get the crowd into it as it went on. Now, you had CJ Perry out there, and Miro was yelling at her, and she was cheering for Andrade, like Andrade would be in a submission. He'd get to the rope, and CJ Perry was very happy about this. It was back and forth here. Now, Andrade hit his spinning elbow. Miro kicked out of it, and then Andrade put on the figure four. Miro reversed it, but then Andrade was able to reverse it back into the figure four, and then he went for the figure eight. But at this point, we got the swerve. CJ Perry turned against Andrade, helping out her husband, and Miro was able to pick up the victory with the game over submission. It was a very solid match. Looks like a write-off for Andrade, and we'll see what happens. I mean, the belief is that he's going back to WWE. His wife is there, and I don't think Triple H would have ever fired him. I don't think Andrade would have left if it was Triple H's call. So again, another guy that has been very vocal on social media, and I'm not surprised at all. And it was definitely better than that WrestleMania match, for sure. Next up, we had Toni Storm versus Riho for the AEW Women's Championship. This match was pretty much what I thought it was going to be. It was basically filler. Give Toni Storm a win as champion. Riho was the first champion, so she got the opportunity here, and she had a pretty good showing. You had Luther out there, though, who was interfering on multiple occasions. Like, Riho went for a crossbody off the apron, and Luther caught her and handed her over to Toni Storm. Not a disqualification, but eventually the referee had enough because Luther kept getting involved, and the referee kicked him out. But Wasn't enough for Riho to get the win. She got several near falls, and Toni kept kicking out. And then Toni knocked Riho off the top rope, hit a DDT, and picked up the win. Now, after the match was over, Mariah May came into the ring, and she gave Toni some rose petals, and the championship run continues. I mean, it was a basic match. You got to have a women's title match on the pay-per-view, but there really wasn't a whole lot to it. It was like a Dynamite match, maybe slightly above your average women's Dynamite match. Next up, we had Swerve Strickland versus Dustin Rhodes. It was supposed to be Swerve Strickland versus Keith Lee, but Keith Lee is banged up, and he went on Twitter/X right before the show and said that he was in bad shape, and he had an injury since 2022 that got worse after the Final Battle pay-per-view, which was a couple weeks ago. So my question is, if Keith Lee was worse after that pay-per-view, why did they announce it last week on Dynamite? If there was a chance that Keith Lee wasn't going to be able to do the match, why did they announce it just to not deliver the match? Dustin Rhodes came out, and they tried to make the most of it. I think they should have just cut it. I know they wanted to give Swerve a spot on the pay-per-view, and they did an angle to give him some heat where he blindsided Dustin during Dustin's entrance, and they brought out the cinder block, put it around Dustin's foot, and Swerve came off the top, did the stomp, but Dustin refused to just be taken to the back. He got in the ring, he hobbled into the ring, somehow got to his feet, and told the referee to ring the bell. So they did the match, and Dustin actually got some offense. He actually busted out the Destroyer, did his power slam, and he got in enough offense that Prince Nana was on the apron, but he got knocked off. And then eventually Swerve was able to turn the tide, and Dustin was defiant. He was defiant. He yelled, "Come on, mother effer," at Swerve and flipped him off. And Swerve then took down Dustin with 2 house call kicks and finished him off with a Swerve stomp. I mean, there was no chance Dustin Rhodes was beating Swerve Strickland on this show, but they tried. They tried to make the most of it and build up Swerve a little bit more, give him some heat. It was fine for what it was, but I would have been fine if they just cut it off of the pay-per-view entirely, and they could have done the angle on Dynamite or something. Shout out to Gomer Kyle, who sent in a $10 super chat. I appreciate the super chat. Thank you. He says, "Happy New Year, Aaron, and the whole No DQ Galaxy. Cheers." I appreciate that very much, Gomer Kyle. Happy New Year, and thank you all for tuning in tonight. I appreciate it, whether you're watching live or on demand. If you're enjoying the video, by the way, please consider giving it a like on YouTube and spread the word. Share a link to this video on social media. Anything you can do would be very much appreciated. Moving on here, we had another 8-man tag team match. We had Chris Jericho. He teamed up with Sting, Darby Allin, and his on-again, off-again friend, now on-again, Sammy Guevara. They went up against Tanesuke Takeshita, Powerhouse Hobbs, Big Bill, and Ricky Starks. Bill and Starks are the tag team champions. Now, this was an interesting match. There's internet speculation about Chris Jericho, possible accusations that could come out against him. We don't know the full scope of what's going on here, but it blew up on Twitter. I mean, people were talking about it all day. And when Chris Jericho came out there, he was getting booed. I mean, he got some cheers, but a lot of boos. And then when he would come in, people were booing him. They were chanting NDA, which is non-disclosure agreement. And remember that whole deal with Stephen P. New, the lawyer for CM Punk, and Jim Cornette. That's what started all this drama. So yeah, a lot of stuff going on with Chris Jericho, and time will tell if anybody comments on it, if Tony Khan comments on it at the media scrum, or if Chris Jericho says something. I mean, who knows at this point what's going to happen next. So that made the match interesting. And also, there were some fans that were chanting CM Punk during the match. Now, it was a good match, and Darby Allin, as usual, taking an ass kicking. Like at one point, Takeshita did like this spinning sit-down power bomb to Darby. And then Hobbs and Big Bill grabbed Darby, and they both swung him halfway across the ring. Darby was taking a lot of punishment here, as usual. And then Sting came in, did some moves. Sting and Jericho did stereo Stinger splashes. And then Guevara came in, did some big moves. Things broke down as they typically do in these matches. And Sting was on the verge of winning. He had Takeshita in the Scorpion Deathlock, and Don Callis made the save. So the young guy that beat Kenny Omega twice was about to lose to Sting, the 64-year-old who's about to retire. Let's forget about that. Don Callis tried to interfere. He was unsuccessful. And then Guevara pinned Ricky Starks with a shooting star press. I guess that'll set up a tag team title match. But the question is, will Jericho be the partner? Like, we still don't know what's going to happen here with Jericho. Match was good. I mean, I don't think it needed to be on the pay-per-view, but it was entertaining for what it was. Could have been a Dynamite match, though, in my opinion. Adam sent in a $5 super chat. Adam says, so Andrade didn't draw a dime in WWE. He didn't draw a dime in AEW. So would anyone care about this bum if he wasn't with Charlotte Flair? Wow, well, that's kind of brutal. Andrade's a great wrestler. He's not the best promo. So I'm hopeful if he's back in WWE, they get him a mouthpiece. I don't know if they're going to have Zelina Vega with him again, or if they're going to find somebody else. But I think if he's got a mouthpiece, he can be a very effective mid-card heel. I don't think he's ever going to be like a top-tier guy, but he's a really solid wrestler when he's motivated and he has the opportunity to succeed on a big stage. We had Julia Hart versus Abadon for the TBS Championship. Now, this was a house rules match, which meant that pretty much anything goes. Biting was allowed in this match. That's what Abadon wanted. So that actually helped her during the match. Like when she was in trouble, she started biting Julia Hart, and the crowd was chanting, "This is spooky." Apparently, we're having a little bit of technical difficulties. You know, that can happen from time to time. So I apologize if I'm sounding robotic or if I'm freezing. Hopefully it's okay now. House rules match. This is spooky chants, which I think has to be a first. Julia got the upper hand for a while, and then Abadon was biting her to get back in control, and Julia applied the heartless submission. Abadon was able to counter that, and then when things were starting to look good for Abadon, we had Sky Blue showing up. She interfered. She slammed Abadon's head into the steps, and then Julia got the win with her moonsault. Match was okay. I mean, it was another filler match, very similar to the Toni Storm match where, you know, it was on the card. You have to have the women's match on the card, and you got to give the champion a win. You know, both Toni and Julia just won their titles, I think, at Full Gear. So they weren't about to lose the titles right away. It was filler. It was what it was. Now, after the match was over, we had our next match, which was Christian Cage versus Adam Copeland for the TNT Championship. No DQ match, my specialty. Up until this point, I thought the pay-per-view was actually not great. Like, I think it was below par. Not that it was bad or anything, but it felt like a glorified Dynamite. And none of the matches, even Andrade's match, none of them really hit like your top tier AEW pay-per-view matches. They were just good, but not great, and not what you would expect from an AEW pay-per-view. This match stepped it up big time. Like, this was arguably the best match of the show, in my opinion. I mean, these guys, Adam Copeland, Christian, veterans, they went out there, and Adam Copeland was not holding back whatsoever. They brawled into the crowd, and Nick Wayne was there. Copeland jumped off one of those arena platforms and did a crossbody onto both of the guys. And then they fought back by the ring. Copeland got thrown into the steel steps, and he was bleeding near his eye. Now, Copeland made his entrance with his WrestleMania 22 vest, which was basically a giveaway. Fans even were picking up on it. They were chanting, "We want fire." So we'll get to that here in just a second. And they were also chanting TLC, and we had tables. We had a ladder brought into play. Christian did a sunset flip power bomb. They were both on the ladder, and Christian hit that move, but Copeland was able to come back from that. We had chairs involved. Copeland tried to do the concerto, but then Nick Wayne got involved. And then Copeland ended up spearing Christian through one of the tables that was set up in the ring. Shayna Wayne, Nick Wayne's mom, pulled the referee out of the ring at the last second. And then Christian and Wayne, they set up a table on the outside of the ring, and they brought out the lighter fluid, and they set the table on fire. But in the process of what was coming next, the fire went out. The fire botched the sequence. So Adam Copeland had to actually relight the table. And meanwhile, as he's doing this, Nick Wayne is just standing on the apron, like trying to act like he's dazed and doesn't know where he's at. And this was going on for a while. So this kind of took away from the moment. And then when Copeland power bombed Nick Wayne, basically Nick Wayne's butt hit the flaming table for a split second, and then he flipped over and did the Shawn Michaels exaggerated bump. So it didn't really look all that crazy, despite the fire being there, because Nick Wayne barely touched the flames. Like, his butt touched it for a split second. This whole thing could have been executed better. Like, it didn't look as cool, nearly as cool as the Mick Foley spot from WrestleMania 22. But they kept going. And then Christian tried to use the TNT title. Copeland gave him a low blow. And then Copeland used Christian's move, the kill switch, and picked up the victory. Now, after the match, Kill Switch attacked the new TNT champion, Adam Copeland, beat the crap out of him, and was going to cash in his Battle Royal Money in the Bank contract, whatever you want to call it. But then Christian stopped him. Christian wanted the contract, and Kill Switch hesitated and finally gave Christian the contract, and Christian cashed it in and pinned Copeland to regain the championship. So I have mixed feelings on this. Like, I get it. You know, Copeland cashed in Money in the Bank, so it was kind of like what goes around comes around, but he's also a babyface. And also, it, like, kind of defeated the whole purpose of everything they did just for Christian to have the title again at the end. It reminded me, and I mentioned this on Twitter, it reminded me of an episode of Monday Nitro, WCW, in 1999. There was an episode where Sting beat DDP to win the world title, only for there to be another match, and it was a 4-way, and DDP regained the title. So when it was all said and done, DDP was once again champion, and it was like Sting never even won the title. So that's kind of how this felt here. And then they're teasing like, okay, what's next for Adam Copeland? It just felt thrown together. Like they should have put more stock into the Battle Royal. You're doing this whole Money in the Bank type contract thing. So I'm not sure how I feel about it, but the match was excellent. It was definitely a pay-per-view quality match worthy of being on the show. Adam Copeland still has it, and Christian does too. As far as predictions go, like if you predicted Copeland to win the title, you were right. I mean, he didn't leave with the title, but he won the title. So there you go. Next up, we had Eddie Kingston versus Jon Moxley in the Continental Classic final. Very good match here with these guys. Pretty much what you would expect from them, though. Like a lot of the chops, they're daring each other to chop the other guy. The brawl on the outside, and Moxley gave Kingston a paradigm shift on the floor. Kingston barely beat the referee's 10 count, and they traded more shots. They flipped each other off. Moxley hurt his knee. Kingston was taking advantage of that. Kingston was doing the machine gun chops, put on a bulldog choke. Moxley was able to counter with a choke of his own. Kingston got to the ropes, and then they kept trading shots. They were going crazy with each other with shots back and forth. And then finally, Kingston got the win with the spinning back fist. It was a very good match. I don't think it was as good as Christian and Copeland, but they put on a really solid performance here. It was a hard-hitting match. And yeah, there was a point where Kingston did this dive and looked like he almost gave himself a concussion. But he pulled through, got the win, and then afterwards, crowd chanted, "You deserve it." Moxley hugged Kingston, and Kingston got this new title. He's got the Triple Crown Championship. He's got this new Continental title. So yeah, we got yet another championship in AEW. But yeah, I'm happy for Kingston. I mean, is it 2 years too late? Probably, but he finally gets his flowers. He finally gets his big win on a pay-per-view after, like, it felt like years of losing on pay-per-view. I'm happy for Kingston that he got his moment here. It was very good. Then we had the main event of the evening, MJF defending his World Heavyweight Championship against Samoa Joe, rematch from a couple months ago. Before the match, we had a little video package with various people from Long Island putting over MJF, one woman praising about their sex life. And then MJF came out with a robe, King of Long Island, and he introduced Adam Cole as his manager or, moral support, whatever. Adam Cole hobbled out to the ring, and we had our match. And MJF tried to take it to to Joe, and Joe quickly got the upper hand. MJF was banged up, and this is legitimate too. Like he's hurt. Apparently, he's taken time off after this show, and you'll know why here in a moment. MJF, he had his shoulder bandaged up. He had a sling on. And Joe was targeting it, but MJF kept fighting back. MJF tried to go after Joe's arm, came off the top of the stomp onto Joe's arm, hit the heat seeker, Joe kicked out of that. And then the referee got knocked down. And this was MJF's opportunity to do some shady tactics. And he gave Joe a low blow. And he managed to pick up Joe. And he tried it once earlier in the match and could not do it. MJF got up Joe for an F5. Superman here. Referee slowly recovered, made the count, but Joe kicked out. And then Joe was able to turn the tide of the match. He applied the Coquina clutch submission. The Long Island fans were cheering, trying to get MJF back into it. Referee held up the hand, dropped, held it up again, dropped again, and then the third time, it dropped. And the match was called off. New World Heavyweight Champion, Samoa Joe. And there was a comment in the chat room that it was very similar to the Brock Lesnar Undertaker match with the streak ending. And I wonder if that was the idea. I mean, MJF doing the F5 might have been a clue. But yeah, it was out of nowhere. Like, I don't think anybody was expecting a title change in this fashion. Like, I think some people may have predicted a title change, but not like this. Just out of nowhere, Samoa Joe wins by submission and is the new AEW World Champion. Crowd was shocked by it for sure. Like, they did not see it coming. MJF loses in Long Island. MJF goes down in his hometown. And then after the match, after Joe left, we had Adam Cole checking in on MJF. MJF obviously very upset. Crowd was chanting bullshit at the finish. And then we had the Devil's Henchmen show up. No surprise here. And they went after MJF, and then they grabbed Adam Cole. They were going to hit Adam Cole with a steel chair, and MJF was saying, "You better not effing hit him with that chair." At this point, the lights went out. They came back on, and it was Adam Cole sitting in the chair. Adam Cole was the devil, which, as I mentioned on the prediction video, this was the most logical way for this to go. And I feel like the devil angle here with all these mystery attackers, I feel like it was done this way because Adam Cole got hurt. I honestly think they would have done the heel turn sooner if MJF or if Adam Cole had not gotten hurt. Keep in mind, I think this was always the plan for the turn, because remember, a couple months ago, well, several months ago, before Cole got hurt, he did the stabbing in the back motion when they were hugging. And it was very subtle, but fans picked up on it. And it was a throwback to NXT when Cole did the same thing. So they had already planted the seeds that Cole was going to stab MJF in the back. Now, the question is, what kind of shape is Adam Cole in? You know, if he had double surgery on his knee, like that's going to put him out for a long time. Like, he's still got a long road to recovery. But you could have him just be like a manager, and maybe they can do this angle where MJF is gone for a while, and when he does come back, he's got to go through the henchmen one by one until he gets to Adam Cole. So they very well could be planning that. Now, we did have the reveal of the henchmen, which was exactly what I expected. The Kingdom, no surprise, Roderick Strong, Mike Bennett, Matt Taven, and Wardlow. And Wardlow even threw a little red herring out at fans. Like, he said he was in London. He tweeted it out. "I'm in London. I'm not even there. I'm not the devil." But But yeah, he was part of the group. And yeah, they all stood tall with their masks off. And then with the help of the Kingdom, Wardlow powerbombed MJF. And a lot of people also pointed out that MJF had like the same color tights that he had when Wardlow squashed him at Double or Nothing in 2022. So there appeared to be a few little clues as to what was going to happen here. So I'm intrigued by it. I think it was the right decision as far as logic. Adam Cole being the guy who was working against MJF all along. They did tease it, like before Adam Cole got injured. They planted the seed for it. But yeah, the question is, why didn't Adam Cole turn against him sooner? I mean, the real reason is that Adam Cole got hurt and they had to stretch this thing out. And I think that's why they did the whole devil angle, because of the injury. All in all, it was an interesting ending to the show. And MJF, I suspect, is going to be gone for a while. I don't think he's leaving AEW. I think he's just taking time off. I would be shocked if he doesn't return. So all in all, it was a good show. I do think before the last three matches, it was a disappointing pay-per-view. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't great either. It wasn't at the level of previous shows. I do like the ending, and I liked Moxley and Kingston, and Copeland and Christian was a great match. And everything else was at least good, not bad or anything. I give the show a solid B. And that might be one of the weaker letter grades that I've given the show, because I usually feel like I give the show an A- or a B+. I give it a B. I thought it was a good show, and I feel like there is some buzz coming out of this show. Whether it leads to anything positive for AEW, that remains to be seen. I did enjoy the show. I would not strongly recommend it if you missed it. I mean, really, I think it was a 3-match show, the last 3 matches, and everything else was like a glorified Dynamite. So if you can find a way to watch it, check out Adam Copeland versus Christian, and check out the main event, and even check out the Continental Classic, especially if you invested time in watching the tournament on TV. And I think it was satisfying. It was Kingston's story. Like, he was putting the titles up for grabs, so it made sense for him to win. It was a good show. We'll see what the follow-up is. I mean, the follow-up can really make or break it. Like, we'll see if they can keep the momentum going with it, or if it's going to fizzle out. And how will Joe be as champion? I mean, we almost forget about Samoa Joe being the new world champion. Like, it almost feels like an afterthought after the whole Devil storyline. So I am intrigued to see what happens next. Hopefully they have a good follow-up for this. And thank you guys again for tuning in. And thank you for following No DQ throughout 2023. Hope to see you guys in future live chat rooms for these streams. I very much appreciate it. Please keep spreading the word. Tell a friend. Stay tuned to NoDQ.com for the very latest. I'm sure there'll be more news coming out. Day 1 is coming up, and apparently a former WWE champion is going to be on that show, and people are already buzzing about the possibilities of that. Stay tuned. Take care, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Happy New Year, and say yes to NoDQ.com, and I will see you all next time.